HBO, here's what I would do. You take the cast of this movie, give them a limited series to work with. That way we can explore some of these storylines just a bit more, and I think fans would love that because everybody is so good in this movie. What is up, good fans? Welcome back to my channel. Here is my review for the Many Saints of Newark. I was just in Newark and I'm going back this week, so I should have filmed this review there. Missed opportunity. We're going to talk about it spoiler-free. Let's do it. Young Anthony Soprano is growing up in one of the most tumultuous eras in Newark's history, becoming a man just as rival gangsters begin to rise up and challenge this all-powerful crime family in their hold over the increasingly race-torn city. Caught up in the changing times is the uncle he idolizes, Dickie Moltisanti, who struggles to manage both his professional and personal responsibilities, and whose influence over his nephew will help make this impressionable teenager into the all-powerful mob boss we'll later come to know. And we knew this movie was going to somewhat revolve around Dickie Moltisanti's character because, well, first of all, the name Moltisanti means many saints, right? And you cast someone like Alessandro Nivola in that role, someone who is capable of carrying a large portion of a film on his shoulders, but he's also surrounded by an incredible, one of the best supporting casts of the year. Leslie Odom Jr., John Bernthal, Vera Farmiga, Corey Stoll, Ray Liotta, oh my goodness. But the most interesting one for me was Michael Gandolfini, of course, the son, in real life, of Tony Soprano himself, playing his father's role in this prequel film. So part of me was thinking, well, maybe this movie would start to revolve around him at a point, or just kind of push everything else to the side and focus on this young version of this character. And I feel that this movie is at its best when it's focusing on Dickie and Johnny and that side of this mob story, as opposed to trying their best to make this a prequel built around Tony Soprano, which they do a pretty good job of. There are some things about his story that I wish they would have either focused a bit more on or just incorporated in a bit better, because every time they would shift that focus, it would kind of take away from the story that we were getting. But you also have Leslie Odom Jr.'s character of Harold, who is a fascinating character because he actually has a relationship with this family, but there's a fallout of sorts, and his mentality begins to shift when he wants to bring a light to something that he believes will make a difference. And in the background of all of this happening, you have the race wars and how that is influencing his motivations of not only what he plans to do, but what he does that causes other people around him, one scene in particular that I thought was expertly handled, to get hurt. But his character, as good as he is in the movie, is almost forgotten about at a point, and they set up so many things for him that we get some resolve to. Like, there's one moment at the end, and I'm like, okay, well, that's where he is right now. But the entirety of the third act, he's barely in, and that was so unfortunate because he had such a good amount of buildup and such an impact on other characters as a character himself. And again, that's kind of my only big flaw with this movie, is the fact that there are so many different storylines going on, where I believe if the focus was just on those characters that are commanding every single scene and they're trying their best not to shift focus back to this and back to that, then I believe this would have worked. And I actually think this would have worked better as a limited series because it just feels like 2 hours is not enough. Now, maybe that's because I was enjoying so many things about this movie and I just wanted more from it, because it's that kind of film to where you're just engaged with every single storyline, it feels like. And Tony is a character, and I have to give kudos to Michael Gandolfini. I have to, right? Obviously, the lead, Nivola, is spectacular as Dickie, and again, that command of his screen time. Ray Liotta playing dual characters in this movie, which I did not know was going to happen. That was so awesome to see. But Michael Gandolfini, whenever he's on screen, I am just feeling the presence of a young version of that character, like to a T. It's actually scary how good of a job he does. Just his mannerisms and some things that he does, the moment involving the ice cream truck. I'm like, yeah, you can see where this character was and how he is slowly growing in. And that relationship with his uncle, or at points a lack thereof, and kind of his motivations behind that, tells me exactly where he's going to go, not only because I know where he's going to go from watching the show, but just to see that was super cool. And yeah, by the way, I did see the show. Now, it's been a while, and there are certain episodes that I may have even skipped over because I was younger, but the crux of the show, the character arcs, Vera Farmiga, her take on his mother, and that relationship, you can see where it spirals to later on in the series, and I can completely understand how someone's going to watch this movie without seeing The Sopranos and be like, yeah, okay. Like, what was the point of that, right? But if you know the show, the core, the heart of the show, and maybe this is a detriment to the film, right? But I can also see this as somewhat of a standalone movie because the character of Dickie, one that we've always kind of wondered about, right? We see the fallout of that in the actual series, but where he was at the beginning of this movie, everything that happens to him, what he does to others, and then has to go through, and how everything kind of turns, and I won't go any further because I don't want to dive into spoilers. I thought it was handled expertly. And I love this kind of story, this genuinely engaging character study, multiple character studies in this movie, to where you can see the mentality of each person involved and how that carries and shifts over. So while I believe this movie did miss a couple of opportunities to be, spectacular, kind of what I wanted from the film, I believe it's a really, really good showcase of these characters, giving us characters we had never seen before, and storylines that were compelling, engaging, but most importantly, the mentality of a character like Dickie, the mentality of a character like Tony. It's showcased so well. I think that's kudos to the writing. I think that's kudos to Alan Taylor's direction. Before I give you guys my score, I want to say thank you so much for watching this video. Are you watching The Many Saints of Newark on HBO or in theaters? Sopranos fans will be happy to hear that this film brilliantly dives into a few of these beloved characters. Not every subplot feels integral, but the end result is more than solid. I'm going a 72% with my score. I enjoyed this film, but like I said at the beginning, I would love to get more from these interpretations of these characters. Where do we go from here? And I'm just so happy with how a lot of these individuals represented these characters on screen, whether we knew them or not, before we watched the movie. You guys the best. If you enjoyed this video, drop your thumbs up down below. I'll see you soon.